Well, happy now to be joined once again by the Salem News reporters, Paul, Leighton, and Dustin. Luca, gentlemen, welcome back. And I guess it's still not too late to say Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thank you, Rick.
Very good. Paul, I know you've been off for a while. Dustin and I have been commiserating over the last couple of weeks and trying to keep caught up here. But let's start. There's a couple of, I think, interesting stories coming out of the Salem News under your title here. Is that's what not title. What's the word I'm looking for? Under your
byline.
Byline. That's it. I know it. I knew it one time when I took Journalism 101. Anyway, I want to start with what's going on. The story about a Danvers nursing home, because that's rather chilling, I think.
Yes, thanks, Rick. Yeah, I had a story that ran today about some alleged abuse at the Brentwood nursing home in Danvers on Liberty Street in Danvers. All this information was in a report that was on the federal website for the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid. And anyway, the allegations are that a nurse's aide sexually abused 3 of the residents on an overnight shift last summer at Brentwood. And according to this report, the nurse's aide was a temporary worker called in by the staffing agency that night to fill a spot when a regular employee called out, and that aide was not certified by the state. So you had this, according to this report, you had an uncertified aide who was working alone for about an hour on this particular unit, according to the report, and that's when these incidents took place. So the suspect has been charged and is due back in court next week. So it just, I've written a lot about nursing homes and different problems they've had, and it's a tough situation. A lot of them are short staffed, not that that's any excuse for this particular incident, and a lot of them say they're not getting reimbursed enough from the government. This one in Danvers, Brentwood, is a for-profit nursing home. It's run by a company from New Jersey. I've written a lot about them before, but anyway, it's a terrible situation, but we felt it's important that this information gets out so the public can read it and decide for themselves what they might want to do with certain situations with their family members when they're looking for nursing homes.
I think that's a key, Paul. I have a son who lives in a group home. He has Down syndrome. And the caretakers are from the ARC, and they couldn't be more wonderful and more special. But if I don't keep my eyes on things, sometimes outside forces, outside vendors, I guess you would call them, sometimes they try to dupe the caregivers, and it's tough. As me, I mean, I'm an old man, but I'm relatively still with it, and I can keep an eye on things, and I see them every week. But for some people who have older folks in the nursing home and stuff like that, it's hard for working folk to keep up with their parents or whoever it might be every day. And again, as you mentioned, with staff, short staff, sometimes you just get, for want of a better phrase, someone off the street. And
right.
I think it's good that you do that. And I'm sure, anecdotally, at least in your coverage over the years, you found that people who are able to stay involved with their loved ones' care do seem to do a little bit better.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. And I think there's an issue of transparency too that it kind of bothers me. So there's this whole report on this incident that's public and anybody can read it. Just try to find it. I know how to find it now because I've been doing these stories for years. And so, you go to this, it used to be called your Nursing Home Compare, but if you type in nursing home in Medicare, and you'll get this website, and you can search the records of any nursing home in the country, and you click through, but it's a little bit like a lot of websites. You have to click quite a few times and know where you're looking to find this report. And so it's basically buried on a website that a lot of people don't know about, but it's public information. There's no requirement for the nursing home to post it on their website or post something on the front door as you walk in. If you go on this website, this federal website, there's literally and they just started there's a red hand in front of Brentwood's name, like a little icon of a red hand, and you click and it said, if there's a red hand, that means that there was an incident of serious allegations of abuse.
At some point, I want to ask you both about government transparency, because I recently got my real estate tax bill, and nowhere on there can I find out what my property is valued at, and I don't know how to do that. So I go to City Hall, and I ask at City Hall, I go to the collector's office, how do I find that? And I was told, well, it's on the city website. Great. Can you give me a little more information how I can find that? So, I mean, you go right to the source, and they tell you to go back to a website, and you got to maneuver a lot, and that's just to find out what my property is valued at. But that's a story for another day.
Yeah.
And thank you for that. I appreciate it. Dustin, I know that you're on the road once again, a busy man, and it's great that you're so mobile. We love that. Want to ask you first of all about old friend Chief Paul Tucker, who became a representative, and now he's the Essex District Attorney. And I wonder if you could just bring me up to speed on all of that.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. There's a number of changes in leadership. You had Paul Tucker going from state rep over to district attorney. You had Manny Cruz now elevating to state rep. So it's really cool. There was a really great ceremony for Paul Tucker that was held at Salem High School, which is, of course, the school he graduated from in the 1970s. I think actually as a new school. I couldn't verify that at the time, but I remembered hearing somewhere that I think maybe the school might have opened that year, and then Paul Tucker was walking in as a new student in the new school. Mm-hmm. So it just kind of came full circle to have that, 40 some odd years later, to have him take the oath of office in the auditorium that he grew up in, basically, and to have Blodgett there. You had, a couple of district attorneys before him. Kevin Burke was there, and you had a chief justice, doing the swearing in. It was just a really beautiful ceremony, and it went really well.
Well, as district attorney, I read, and I don't know if you were the one who wrote the story or not, but it's coming out that he's not really making very many changes in the office. He might be adding a little bit to what's going on.
Yeah. So what was interesting, and I'm not 100% sure on additions that he's making, but one of the things that was really cool, and he actually kind of touched on this in his remarks, and this is, I think, how you heard about it because it made it into the story, is that he basically asked every single person in the office to submit a resume and a cover letter. And because of that, he now knows about every single person working for him. He's basically replacing his assistant district attorneys, I believe, just, basically the people at the top. But everybody else in the office has remained the same for the time being. And because of that, he has all their cover letters where they're talking about the individual things that brought them to be in the district attorney's office, that led them down a path of criminal justice. And now, because of that, he just has a really personal connection with every single person he's working with, which is a very Paul Tucker-esque way of doing it.
Yeah, and to have it done that quickly, to learn about your people that quickly is really important, because I know when we used to get new principals in, or new superintendents or whatever, my hope was that they would just listen for a while before they started wielding the axe, and get to know who your people are. So that's impressive. The other thing was, I understand the lieutenant governor was on hand.
Yes. I didn't really get a chance to chat with her a whole lot, but yeah, she was there, and she's kind of popped up in a couple of places. I know she also was at the reorganization for the city council in Salem. That was the day before she was sworn in as lieutenant governor. So, but you mean, she still lives in Salem. She's a Ward 4 resident, I think Ward 4. I'd have to go back and look, but I'm pretty sure that she's in the Heights neighborhood somewhere. So she's still a Salem resident. She's still living in the city every single day. She's still shopping on Highland Avenue. It's one of the things that's interesting that I heard is with the upgrade to lieutenant governor, she now gets a state police escort everywhere. So it's basically, if, she's waking up and she's late to get somewhere, she gets there really, really quickly. And I actually had a joke with her the final day that I saw her as a mayor, where she mentioned that she now has a police escort everywhere. And I was like, wow, you could have used that as mayor, because she was dealing all the time with, sorry, I had somebody was trying to get my attention.
I got you.
She was trying all the time to get to things and was dealing with the Salem traffic every single time. So now it's just kind of a little ironic that now that she's elevated lieutenant governor, now she has the power to get places quickly.
Well, there's some power on that end of the North Shore, I'll tell you, with the governor living in Swampscott, the lieutenant governor in Salem. Appreciate it. We're going to come back to Dustin in a minute here. You got to take care of business, Dustin. Okay. And we'll come back and talk a little bit more about the city of Salem. Paul, when your coverage, what were you doing in Danvers anyway? I mean, you're usually in the Beverly area, yes?
Yes, but we're very versatile here at the
Yes, you are.
So Yeah, we go where we're needed.
There you go. Well, now I want to ask you about something I thought was really interesting. It just jumped off the page. Was Beverly is looking for something called, and I would put this in quotes if I were writing it down, a diversity director. What is that all about?
Yes. Well, yes. The city created this position a couple of years ago, a director of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And a lot of cities and towns and private companies and nonprofits also have started creating this position in the wake of the George Floyd killing a couple of years ago and the Black Lives Matter movement, and in this sort of reckoning with racial justice and equity. And so the city created this position, and they hired somebody 2 years ago, and but then he left about a year later, and they've been trying to fill this position ever since. So this is a job. The person works under the mayor, and they look at the city and schools and issues of racial equity in terms of trying to hire more people of color, the vendors that cities use to do certain jobs. How many minority companies are being used, and services being provided equitably throughout the city to different neighborhoods. And the city actually they did a race equity audit a year ago, and it showed there, I mean, as you might expect, the city's staff and the school staff are overwhelmingly white. And the demographics are changing in Beverly, just like a lot of places. And so the city is in the process of trying to hire to hire more people of color, and to make other these other changes. And this is where the director of they call it DEI is the term. The DEI director would play a key role in this. But I spoke with Mayor Cahill, and he said that they've interviewed about a dozen people in the last year or so, including some people last week, and they hope to hire somebody soon. But the bottom line, he said it's difficult because it's a relatively new field, and a lot of cities and towns are looking for DEI directors. I know Salem has hired one, and Danvers has hired one. So it's interesting that there's a lot of emphasis on this area now, but it's also difficult, according to the mayor, to find qualified people to fill the position.
I say this frequently as a former educator. I feel that education has really flopped in America. I mean, the fact that we have to have positions like that to help people, to protect people. You would have thought after all these years, living in this society with our Constitution and so on, that everybody would be equal under the law, so to speak. And it's to me, it kind of saddens me that we have to do this, and I certainly recognize the need for it. But I was surprised. I didn't know that cities were developing that position. And so you say that's more common now throughout the Commonwealth?
Yes. Isn't that true, Dustin? In Salem, they hired a DEI director. The Beverly schools actually have a director of, a DEI director. I think the title's a little different for the last couple of years. So even, school departments separately have hired people to look at these issues. And, Beverly created a race equity task force. They have a human rights committee. They have a BIPOC book club, with to emphasize reading works by minorities, and touching on all these topics. So yeah, there's really quite an effort to try to rectify a lot of the injustices from the past.
And Dustin, you're affirming that in Salem as well?
Yeah. And not just in Salem. So I've seen that in Salem. They have the Human Rights Task Force. They have, the DEI director that's been there for a little while. I think Beverly may have hired theirs a couple of weeks before Salem. Marblehead has a couple of groups that are commissions. Hamilton, Wenham have a couple that, if I remember correctly, they had one for Hamilton, one for Wenham, and then one that was a marriage of the both or something like that. So like it's something that's popping up everywhere, wow, including in all the towns.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Let's return to Salem one more time, and I want you to expand on this whole situation with the new mayor, the city council, and tell me everything you know about it.
Oh God, how much time do you have? So no, there's a lot going on. And what's interesting is there's been a story that I've been working on. So there's been this kind of homeless encampment that's been set up in the front of Old Town Hall that a lot of people have been asking questions about. And it's been tough actually kind of getting some answers from City Hall, because City Hall is basically buried with the transition that's going on right now. So with the reorganization of the city council, I think it was last week, where Megan Stott became president, they then voted to have Bob McCarthy become mayor. So for the time being, Ward 1 technically doesn't have a city councilor, though anybody in Ward 1 who has, got a flat tire because of a pothole or something like that, they still talk to Bob. Bob delegates it to the city councilors at large. It's going to get covered. But that's kind of one of the things that they're doing to kind of fill a gap right now, because normally if you have a vacancy on the city council for 6 months or more, they have to hold a special election to get a new city councilor. And because they're expecting Bob McCarthy to come back as a city councilor sometime mid to late May when they hold their election for a new mayor, they're basically saying it's only going to be 4 or 5 months that we're not going to actually have a city councilor Ward 1. So we don't need to elect one. Bob can just keep pretending that he is one. He doesn't have the voting power, but he can still help residents get what they need, out of the city. So there's that. Kim was mayor until the exact end of her State of the City address, at which point she resigned. And the next day, 15 hours later, she was unemployed for about 15 hours, which hadn't happened in 17 years. And then she was sworn in at noon, I think the following day on Thursday last week. So that was a great ceremony. And with that, that's when Bob, takes over as mayor. And I had a chance to pop in on Friday and see him. He already had the thing on his desk, and the desk was relatively empty. There was a picture of him and his 3 kids. So he's kind of slowly moving the things in, but I also know he's not moving a ton of things in because he knows that in about 4 months he's going to be out of there. So
Is there a push for him to run for mayor?
I haven't personally heard one yet, but I know that there's been pushes kind of targeting a few people. Steve Dibble was getting a lot of pushes. There's a couple of other bloggers around the city that have been getting hit, and signs are popping up for them, sometimes as a joke, which is actually kind of funny. But there's really only kind of 4 candidates right now that have actually declared. And last I had checked last week, only one had pulled papers to run. So.
Okay. All right, we're going to finish up by asking if there's anything else you want to mention. I'm going to start with Paul. I know that last time Dustin and I talked, I think it was with Dustin, we talked about dam fish or fish dams, whatever. And now you're working on something that has to do with pot.
Yes.
Or you will be working
this afternoon, as we speak. Yes, as we speak on Thursday here, I'm going to get a look at what will be the city of Beverly's first marijuana dispensary. Beverly's a little late to the game. The one in Salem opened. Dustin, I keep asking you, but how many years has it been since Salem opened its first?
I think it was.
It's been a while. So
yeah. I think it was 2019, I think, when the recreational opened. They've got 3 now, but there's still 2 that haven't opened, that have just been waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. So
I think
right. So in Beverly, the city has signed agreements for 3 reasons, but this one is scheduled to open soon. It's going to be located on Enon Street in North Beverly, up by the Beverly train station. There's a little shopping plaza in there, and that's where the shop's going to open. So it'll be interesting to also have one on Rantoul Street, and now I'm forgetting where the other one is going to be. They have another one too that's scheduled to open, but this will be the first one. It's run by a company called Mary Med. They actually bought the rights to this shop from the previous owner. Yeah, so it's supposed to open.
We have one being built down the street from where I live. I'm sorry, we have one being built down the street from where I live, and it's amazing. They leveled everything that was there. There had been a variety store and a tire store, and boy, they just leveled the whole place. And they got machines up the wazoo. So I can't wait to see what this is going to look like. Thank you. We'll be looking forward to reading about that. Dustin, anything you want to mention?
Yeah, City Council is going to be meeting tonight for the first time under President Megan Stott, and they're going to be tackling possibly one of the biggest issues of the year. The $3 million tax break for the Lee Fort Terrace redevelopment is going to be coming out of committee for it's scheduled for a positive vote. Who knows what's going to happen? I think a lot of people are expecting it to pass, but just because it passed unanimously from the committee last week, and I think they only need 7 out of the 10 councilors to get this to go forward. But so they really only need like 2 more votes, but that's going to happen tonight. So other than that, it's basically just have a great day, stay healthy.